My guest today is Violaine de Rosiers, who most recently served as the operations manager for the IFRC in Ukraine. But you also have a 25-year history as a humanitarian with the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. Violaine, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with your most recent experience in Ukraine. This conflict has now fallen off the radar a little bit, but it's still a massive humanitarian crisis. Can you tell us what's going on there from a humanitarian point of view that's perhaps not fully understood or appreciated right now?
The conflict has reached now 2 years, over 2 years. Well, I say the conflict, but it's been going on for quite some time. That's what something that people forget is the conflict in Ukraine is not 2 years old. It's actually almost 10 years old. So it's been quite a change from the February 2022 when the conflict escalated, and now the needs have changed. I would say that the most pressing needs that we see at the moment is the need for protecting the infrastructure. We see more attacks on the electricity and power infrastructure and water infrastructure. So this is something very critical that Ukrainians can still have access to those services. And of course, the psychological trauma is starting to be seen across the population and not just people who are on the front line. So the need for paying attention to the psychological distress of people is increasing. And this is also what we foresee to be the main need in the future, in the coming years, especially with thousands of people coming back from the front line.
You mentioned psychosocial needs might be the most important ones to take care of in the future. Anything else that comes to mind?
So there are two other things that we foresee, and actually the government, with the support from a humanitarian organization, has started to work on this, but it's to protect the schools. So now the government is building shelters in every schools because the kids otherwise cannot continue to go to school. And this, of course, it disrupts the education in a country, is a terrible impact for the long-term development of the country. The other thing that we see is a phase out from typical humanitarian assistance towards more creating livelihood for people. So helping people to get back on the job market or create some job opportunities or even develop new areas of skills or new areas of industry for people to be able to continue to generate income.
Over the last decade or so, we've seen how conflicts and their humanitarian consequences can be seen around the world in seconds due to social media. What is different about Ukraine in this sense, and how has that changed what we understand about the crisis there?
It's a good question because nowadays with technology, it has a good side and it has a downside. The good side is that, for instance, in Ukraine, we have these air raid alerts that are applications that everyone has on their phones. It allows people to be warned ahead of time when there is a potential risk. and it gives time to people to move to the shelter. So it also provides the possibility to somehow continue your daily activities, because you know that you're going to be warned if something is potentially dangerous, and you have time to react to it. So this is something incredible. But at the same time, social media, of course, we know that there's a lot of propaganda. It's extremely difficult to know what is true, what is not true, how to filter the information. And the information is going so fast that it's difficult to keep up and to analyze this information properly. I would say that another advantage of technology and social media is, for instance, the Ukrainian Red Cross. They've been able to launch fundraising campaigns on their own, and they've raised quite a lot of money. They were very successful through social media. They could reach out to the diaspora around the world, and people were very supportive. So that also enabled them to have funding that were a little bit more independent and more flexible. And yes, another very good advantage is the call center. So the Red Cross has a call center with a hotline, so people can call, but also we communicate with people through Messenger, through Viber, all these applications, through Telegram. And so is a very quick response. People have a question, they need something, they don't know where to go, they call the hotline, and then they can get some support there. They can talk to somebody, but they can also get follow up through messages on their phone. So this is actually changing a little bit the landscape of our work.
Another thing that was different was where displaced people were going. Often, when thousands or even millions of people are displaced suddenly, they will often end up in temporary camps, which sometimes become long-term settlements. And humanitarian organizations are often the ones setting up and managing these camps. But this also didn't happen with the Ukraine crisis. Why not? And what can we learn from this experience?
Well, first of all, Ukrainians are, so I would say normally refugee camps are set up when there's a huge influx of refugees in one country or in a neighboring country, and that the state, the host state, doesn't have the capacity to deal with the situation, or doesn't have the ability to integrate those people in another way. So it's a form of control, and it's also a way to make sure that it's easier also logistically for humanitarian organization to provide assistance to people. In the case of Ukraine, technology was one reason why it didn't happen, because we could reach people wherever they were. So if they were in Poland, in Moldova, in Romania, we could reach them by this application, and we could also refer them to services or to the local Red Cross in those countries. And the other reason is also because Ukraine is a huge country. And although there's been a lot of people going out of Ukraine, there were places in Ukraine that were safer. So people preferred to go to those other provinces in Ukraine rather than leaving the country. So many have reached out to friends and families, and those who have crossed the border, they sometimes had friends living in France or in Germany, or they knew people. And I think it's not that unusual. I think we tend to think that every time there is a crisis, we see the refugee camp because that's what the media are showing us. But it's not unusual. We've seen this with the crisis in the Balkans in the 90s. We've seen this with the Lebanese war in 2006. We've seen this in other places where, of course, the preference of people is not to go to a camp. is to find another alternative, and the last recourse is the camp. And often people who end up in camps are the most vulnerable ones. They're people who have no other means. They don't have a social network. They don't have savings, and they have no other alternative. But the majority of people, when a crisis happen, they don't go to camps. They go to other places, or they rent an apartment somewhere else, or they go to the hotel. Or we also see that in crisis in Canada or in the U.S. when the Red Cross, with wildfires or floodings and things like that, people don't necessarily come to these collective shelters. The people who end up in those collective shelters are really the most vulnerable ones.
So, would you say that this model of asylum seekers being accommodated by families or provided with housing within communities, could that be replicated in other places, you think?
It is already happening. But yeah, definitely this in Ukraine particularly, it's been incredible. We've done a study on one of the biggest program that we were supporting with the government, which was a hosting program for people who were displaced. And it was quite surprising because we found out that a lot of people who were hosted also were much safer psychologically. And also the people who hosted, a lot of them were widows or a single woman. Their children had gone out of the country, or their sons had been to fight on the front line, and so it was very difficult for them. So having people in their house was comforting. It was also, we saw a lot of friendship that emerged from these experiences. And people were saying, we feel much safer to be hosted in a house rather than in a collective center. And I think it has also a very important, it's part of the resilience mechanism of people to be able to connect with other people, to be able to talk, to be able to emotionally debrief, because everyone is going through the same. It's not just in Ukraine. Everyone is affected by the conflict, whether you are in the West or on the front line. Everyone has somebody in their family that went to the front line or died, or it's throughout the country. It's not just people who are very close to the front line.
So you spent 2 years in Ukraine, but as mentioned at the beginning in your introduction, this is not your first conflict situation that you worked in. In fact, you've had a very long, rich experience within the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. And you've worked in Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Liberia, and many other places. What have you learned from all of this about humanity, about how to help people through calamity?
Well, the first thing that I would say that comes to my mind is that we don't pay enough attention to the first responders of those crises, which are the local people. A humanitarian like me, people coming from outside, we come at a later stage. And we are portrayed sometimes as the hero, and you leave your comfortable life and you go help other people. For me it's a little bit disturbing because I don't see it that way. I think we have a role to play, but it's changing also. It's not the same role that we had 25 years ago that we have now. And really the people who are best placed to help their own communities when something happens are the people who are there. And I have many examples of that. But for instance, during the Ebola crisis in Liberia, I remember, seeing all these white Western doctors on the news, and organizations, including Red Cross and MSF and all these big organizations, talking about how amazing they were, and to risk their lives. But nobody was talking about the midwives, who were the first one to put like plastic bags on their hands and to try to help and to treat the patients who were affected by Ebola. Of course, because like the midwife in a village, she's the medical focal point for most of the people living there. And so these are the real heroes. These are the people who are they are the first responders. The same thing in Ukraine. The first responders were the volunteers of the Ukrainian Red Cross, were the people who living in those villages that were attacked, and there is, and so for me it's super important to the work of the humanitarian organization should not just be to respond, but also to help the conditions to build the resilience coping mechanism of those communities, because this is the best investment that we can make. It's in Haiti, when the earthquake happened, it was the people who were the neighbors who were pulling out people from the under the rubbles. It was not Spanish rescue team with dogs. And so it's I think there is a bit of a tendency to think that we come in with a solution, and we are here to help and so on. But that would be, yeah, my kind of takeaway from all these years. And people often are portrayed by the media as being victims and no resources and powerless. And we like to see on the media, it helps to raise money. Sorry for my cynicism, but the public needs to see that people are desperate, yeah, but people are not always desperate. A lot of people have resources, a lot of people have dignity, a lot of people are resilient, and they can, they have coping mechanisms, and we need to tap into that, as opposed to maintain a dependency from the outside.
Is this what you were alluding to when you said the role of the international humanitarians is changing? Is our role becoming more of that facilitator, coordinator, trainer of the local first responders?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Often, I think this is what is missing in those contexts. People are not used to organize themselves in for instance, connecting with the authorities or connecting with agencies that can provide them with resources or funding, or themselves are affected by the crisis. So, they also need support, and it's difficult for them to cope with everything that comes with the chaos. So our role is much more a role of coming and supporting them, but not to decide what is best for them, what they need, and certainly not to develop solutions without consulting with those communities, because often they know better what is best suited for them. So I think our role is more a connector, a facilitator, and of course we have knowledge because this is our core business. So it's not just we've been doing this. We are experts in humanitarian crisis in the Red Cross. So of course we have something to offer that those communities might not know, or we have a network of expertise in the Red Cross. In every country we have people with specific expertise. And I think the role of the federation, particularly, is to broker that expertise, and it's a little bit to protect the integrity of the local communities and not overwhelming them, but say, okay, what do you need? Oh yeah, maybe we can ask, this Red Cross. We have that expertise here. We have those resources there, and then we broker those resources, and then we channel them to the population that need it. And rather than coming and doing things, or distributing things, they don't need expatriates or foreigners to distribute assistance to their population. They can do that themselves. So this is a profession that is changing quite a lot.
I think you've summarized the work of IFRC really well, our purpose, what we do, and why we do it. You've, if I may move on to your experience in Liberia that you already mentioned briefly, you've actually written about that. What was the story that you felt you had to tell more deeply through the pages of a book?
Yeah, it was a very life-changing experience for me, that mission in Liberia. Um, I have worked with child soldiers and girls and boys. I have worked with prisoners, and I have worked with families and children that had been separated from their families during the war. And my team was responsible for matching basically the missing child with their families. And the children had been moved cross-border to the neighboring countries in Ivory Coast and Guinea and Sierra Leone. And our job was to find those people. So we would have tips. It was almost like an investigation. We would have tips, and we would talk with the family and conduct a bit of an investigation on the events, what happened at the time that the child disappeared. But sometimes these children, they were away for many, many years. We found children, that had disappeared at the age of 3 years old, and now they were teenagers. So this boy, that was a very special case that we worked on, and this boy was 6 years old, and he had been kidnapped by the rebels. So the armed group that raided the village, they left with the child, and he was very, very young. And we found him. It took a long time, but we found him, and we took him back. So we organized the negotiation of the liberation of that child.
You
'Cause he
found
was
him when
still,
he was 6?
yeah, we found him when he was 6. And so he didn't speak, in Liberia, they speak English. In Guinea, he was in Guinea, they speak French. So he was speaking French. He was integrated into a Muslim family, because Guinea is Muslim and Liberia is Christian. And he had been taken care of, he was not mistreated. He was very well taken care of. But of course, the parents wanted him back. And so he was living in a relatively wealthy family in Guinea, and his biological parents were living in a very poor village with barely nothing. We actually visited that place many times. So when we took the child back, I had a lot of ethical issues in dealing with this. I knew that from the law and from the child's rights perspective, this was, what we were supposed to do. But then you think, oh, this child has never really known his biological parents. And so
How old was he when he was taken?
he was like 1.5 or 2 years old. So you take him, he's been taken once, and then you're taking him back again. And how is he going to cope in that family? He doesn't know them. He doesn't speak the language. He's been, educated in a fairly good school, and now he's going to have to walk 1 hour and a half to go to the nearest school from his village. So all these things, we were with my team, we were discussing this, and although it was a spectacular moment when we brought the child back to his parents, because it was also like the whole village was celebrating. But that really was quite difficult for me. And many, many years after, I've always thought, like, what happened with that child? I was curious to know, how is he doing now? He's probably an adult, and where is he? What is he doing? Does he have children? Is he, so I thought it was a good story to talk about some of the moral dilemmas that we face in our work, because we face this all the time, with different topics or different situations and in different contexts. But yeah, there's always a point where you're like, oh, are we doing the right thing? Like, is this really what we should be doing, or is there another way of doing this? So yeah, that's and putting it on paper, it will also allowed me to process it.
Yes, I can
It
imagine.
was an amazing experience, yeah. And also the negotiation of the release of that child is part of the story, and it's also about having to deal with the people who abducted that child, and having to negotiate. So you need to also use your diplomacy, and although you really, you could be really angry against those people, but yeah, you have to somehow also look at the human being behind the abductor, and what was his motivation, why did he do that, and so on. And so it's, yeah.
Some of the things you've talked about, and more in general, some of these tragedies we see as happening over and over again. And people often wonder, why are there no lasting solutions? And sometimes I think even humanitarians themselves feel like they're putting band-aids on problems and not really solving them. And you alluded to this earlier when you said the role of the international humanitarian is changing. So how do we solve these problems in a more sustainable way? What's your take on that? Is involving the local humanitarians or local first responders a way to solve the problems in a more sustainable way? Or is there something else to it? What's your take?
Well, it's I mean, the Red Cross alone cannot solve all these problems, that's for sure. So for me, I'm a big believer in the collective effort, and we're not very good at that. We work, and most organizations are not good at that. They work very much in silos, and I think the more we will create alliances, the more we will share expertise and knowledge and put that to the service of the people, the more we will succeed. That the issues are too big now. It went beyond what is imaginable. We can't solve climate change alone. I think it's also that the way we work, and in the Red Cross, we do have the advantage of having a local Red Cross. And so our work is really to build the capacity of that local organization to be able to respond in terms of crisis. And then we are there as a backup, but not as a primary responder, and just to support them if they need. And I believe that we need to start looking much more, even in the response, because there will always be a need for humanitarian response, but maybe shorter. And I think the approach that we need to look at is as soon as we can move away from patching or the band-aid approach, and then shift immediately towards more long-term thinking about the situation. So for instance, instead of giving people food parcels, how can we start thinking about helping them to develop small gardens or agriculture, help them with maybe permaculture, for instance, and teach them how to sustain themselves with what is available in their community. Strengthening the links also between the different communities and things like that. I don't believe in this band-aid approach anymore. I think it's necessary for a few weeks, but not it shouldn't be sustained over time. And unfortunately, right now, what prevents us from moving from that band-aid approach to the long-term approach is the funding. The funding is mainly coming with conditions that are attached to it and that are not very conducive for these the back donor funding or government funding is very much, there's a humanitarian envelope, there is a recovery envelope, and there is a development envelope, and we need to make sure that we are able to move across those envelopes, as needed. It cannot be dealt in silos. Even in an emergency situation, you still have to think about recovery. You still have to think about, how are people gonna go back to their jobs, and not thinking about how you're going to sustain them in a camp for 2 years. So I think that is something that we need. It's happening. There are some discussions on different forums, but as long as the funding will be constraining, it will be very difficult to change our ways of working.
Until recently, I think 2020, you were also the co-CEO of something called the House of Social Innovation in Montreal. And before that, you were CEO of another philanthropic organization that also specialized in social innovation. What does that term, social innovation, mean to you? What is it all about?
Innovation is often seen as linked to technology, but social innovation is more about the processes that people use to address the most pressing needs in their communities. And it can vary. There's no one size fits all solution or innovation. It's really about what is an innovation for a community can be something completely, as usual for another community elsewhere. So it's the innovation is defined by the people that this innovation is meant for. And social innovation is really about connecting people together, reconnecting people, because we have lost that. We are living in very individual, in the Western world, we are living in very individual societies. So reconnecting people together is a way of also of creating. So it's giving the space, the means, and the opportunities to people to create, to co-create, and to come up with solutions that are adapted for their needs, and to be able to scale up those ideas. Because you can come up with an idea that will change your life, but if it's just for your home and nobody else can benefit from it, it's not really an innovation. So for to be an innovation, it needs to be first of all, it needs to answer the needs of people. So it needs to be developed by the people who are going to use the solution. Second, it needs to be feasible technologically or financially or logistically, and then it needs to be scalable. So if you have a good idea that is feasible but it's not scalable because you don't have funding for scaling up, it's not really an innovation because it's not going to have a major impact on socially on the people. So this is what social innovation is about. It sounds a little bit theoretical, but there are many examples of social innovation in the world. So, for instance, I was working with the foundation. We were funding social innovation projects with Burmese refugees in Thailand. And so, there are huge camps in Thailand. And these camps have been there for ages, Burmese population and thousands of people. And so they're living in those camps. They're pretty crowded. But then we started a kind of a cooperative project with some people, and we grouped people with different kind of skills, because these people, they were farmers. Some of them, they had worked in other types of industries before they became refugees. And people are not defined by their refugee status. They're defined by who they are and what they can bring. So we created this cooperative, and then people they realized that, oh, we cannot grow food, because they didn't have access to food easily. And also it was quite costly. So they couldn't grow food in traditional gardens. So they started to grow food vertically. And so it was quite interesting, because you were walking in the camps and then you would see all these, tomatoes and cucumbers and beans and all sorts of things growing on the houses. So on the shelters, so people were growing, they adapted the crops to be able to grow vertically instead of horizontally. So that was an innovation that they had developed themselves. We had started this mini lab where it was kind of an agricultural lab, and people were testing things there, and they were starting up with seeds, and then they were using that in their gardens or in their houses. And then they started to produce and produce and produce, and so they were also able to sell their production to other refugees in other camps. So then it created an income for those people. So it was a very interesting project, and it was also having an impact on their psychological well-being, the fact that they could work and they could do something and they could create something. So this is just an example, but it's nothing revolutionary, but it's something that was a need in a context where there was not a lot of opportunities, and then people came together and started to brainstorm and develop that over the years. So so this is an example, but yeah, there are many others.
As a woman leader in the humanitarian sector, what do you think about the current level of gender equity in our operations and response?
It's much better, much better. There are still not enough women in leadership position, I would say. I think we need to encourage more women and young women to. It's a very tough position, when you are a woman, and you have to compromise on your family, and you have to. These jobs are extremely demanding, especially when you are leading an operation or you are in a leadership position. So maybe that's the reason why there's not so many women. Maybe women are more attracted to something that is going to give them more well-being. That could be interesting to do a research on this. But I would say my take on this is I observe that we are becoming more and more tokenistic about this issue. I see a lot of ticking the box kind of, and that worries me a little bit because it has the exact opposite effect. So by wanting to have so many women in different jobs just to tick the box that we are 50-50, it doesn't help anyone. And it certainly kind of fueled the cynicism around that. I want to think that women who are there are competent women and they have a lot to offer. They're not just there because they are a woman. And there are plenty of very competent women out there. So there's no reason why we should hire incompetent women. But I would say it's changing, but it's a bit slow, and it's not just about the numbers, but it's also about the culture. It's about the leadership culture that women bring something different to the business.
What do you think that is? What is different about women leading an operation or, working in a conflict setting, for example? How does a woman approach these things differently from a man, from what you've seen?
Well, I think we have to go back to the prehistorical era where we look at how men reacted to stress and how women reacted to stress. And it's the same thing nowadays. In front of a stressful situation, men will fight and they will react and they will, they will fight the mammoth. Women will have a tendency to group themselves to protect their children and to find collective ways of dealing with the mammoth. And this we see, in emergencies, in different types of operations and contexts. But I think women have a tendency to work more together and to value the complementarity of competencies or skills that they have within a group. So they're less loner, if I may say, and they like to also find solutions together. It's a natural thing in women, I think, in all culture. We like to come together and talk about what we can do better, how can we solve this, and so on and so forth. So there is a bit of more of a collective approach, I would say, and a recognition that we all come with strengths that we have to offer to the collective, and that's how we are stronger together. So I think this is something I appreciate very much, and of course, men. I know I have also worked with men that are fantastic, and they also have that kind of approach. But I think generally in our business, I would say men are a little bit more cowboys. And they want to go and they want to do something and they want to achieve and they want to be recognized for that. I think women maybe work a little bit more with humility.
You said in an interview for Glow Red, which is within the IFRC, a network, a global network for women leaders. You said that being a woman in your job has actually served you well. In other words, you thought this being a woman in our line of business, that could be an advantage. Is this what you meant when you said that?
What I see is that maybe women listen more, and by listening more, you learn more, and by learning more, you can propose things that are a little bit more adapted. So this is maybe an approach that I've seen. You know, I've also, I think we also are maybe more at ease in building trust, and we can get information from people a little bit better because people maybe naturally will trust a woman better than a man. I don't know. I think it's there. I've seen this in different contexts, and it doesn't really have anything to do with religion, or, I've worked in countries, very Muslim countries, and I've also experienced a fantastic access, to communities, even though I was a woman, maybe because I was a foreign woman. But yeah, I think the fact that we maybe listen a little bit more, we also get a bit more information, which is critical when we work in those situations.
Women, on the other hand, however, seem to be much more impacted by crisis, actually. Do you think this is now finally getting enough attention, or still not quite there yet?
I am not sure. I'm not sure. I think women are definitely more affected by crisis, but this is true worldwide. And I would say this is probably because of our status in the society, in the family, the role we play, and the fact that women are still bearing a lot of responsibilities. And in many countries, they are, the income generator. They have to take care of the kids, and so the burden on women is much more. If you look at the crisis in Ukraine, for instance, I would say both men and women are equally impacted by the war. Men are particularly impacted because they have to go fight. And this is quite traumatizing, for society that was living in a very modern, very contemporary European lifestyle, and suddenly you have to leave your job as an engineer or as a doctor or as a web programmer or whatever, and you have to take the weapons and go fight. I sometimes wonder what is going to be the impact on the society in the long term, economically, but also socially and culturally. So it depends on the context. But I'm not sure if, we can really change that. I think what we can do is to equip women and make sure that they are part of the decision making on on the solutions that are proposed to them, and empower the women to be their own decision makers.
If I may turn a little bit to you, Violaine, as a person, your personal life, you were on many such long-term missions and assignments. How did you manage to keep a balance and have a family life, have a personal life?
I I think my family became the Red Cross,
I hear that a
or
lot.
the Red Cross became my family.
Yes.
Yeah, the Red Cross became my family. Um, yeah, I met my some of my best friends in the Red Cross. I met my partner in the Red Cross. So I think it's a choice of life. It's not something you do part time. Just, it's a career, and you need to You need to compromise. I don't have children. I couldn't have children. It was not an option for me. I had to choose between my career and having children. So, and I don't regret anything. I'm very happy with the life I've had and the life I continue to have. It's a privileged. It's a privilege for me to be in this job and to travel the world, to meet new people all the time. So I'm totally fulfilled. I don't have any regrets, or I don't have any. Of course, I miss my biological family. But now, we have the social media. It's funny because my mother was doing some cleaning of the house recently, and she found letters that I had written to her in some of my first missions, with the Red
Yes.
Cross, and when I was in Latin America, because there was no social media at the time, there was no internet. So I was writing her letters, and going to the post office at the village where I was based, and going back to, going through these letters. It was quite amazing to see, you know, how it has changed. Now I can just connect on the internet, FaceTime, or write a message on Messenger, and I can talk to my parents and my friends here all the time. So it's much easier. But I think my way of coping and balancing things is also to fully immerse myself in what I do. And I'm not half there thinking, oh, I'm only here for a year or two and then I'm going back. No, I'm here. This is where I am right now. I'm in the present moment, and I embrace everything that I can learn from this place, the language, the people, the job, because the job also changes all the time. So I feel that I'm extremely privileged to have this kind of life, and my balance is in my head.
When we were speaking before, preparing for this conversation, you mentioned a few very interesting hobbies that help you keep healthy and balanced and prevent burnout, because this job is very all-consuming, as you just described. Can you tell us about your hobbies?
I'm a vivid yoga practitioner, and more recently, I've learned to meditate properly. So this is also a way for me to get back into, when sometimes I lose the compass. I have a very strong compass, and sometimes when I see the needle going like bing, 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 this is how I reconvene with myself. But I also do pottery, and I started doing that many, many years ago. And so wherever I am, it's not always possible. And that's the challenge also, depending on the environment. It's not always possible to do what we like, but where I can, I do pottery. And I'm a cook. I also love to cook, and I love to host. So this is my biggest stress relief. And often people are like, oh no, don't bother, we'll just order something. I'm not, no, 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 I really need I really need to do this. So it's not a burden for me to cook. It's the whole preparation, going to the market, preparing the recipes, thinking about this, inviting people. The art of hosting is something that I really like, and I think it also allows me to keep connected with people, and create my own community wherever I am.
We ask our guests to bring an object that has a personal, special meaning for them. Can you tell us what you brought today? Maybe show it to the camera, but also describe it for our audio audience,
Yeah.
listeners.
So these are two glass rocks,
Uh-huh.
and they were handmade, not by me. I wish I could have done that. They were handmade by a glass blower, and on each of them there's a carving. One of them says balance, and the other one says resilience. And it's very heavy,
Uh-huh.
but I carry those two glass rocks with me everywhere on all my missions. And I put them usually on in the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
And when I prepare to go to work in the morning and I make up and I do my hair and all this, I look at those, and it's a reminder of the importance of keeping balance and my own resilience. And I've carried those with me for years and years, and they're very precious. There's nothing
Yeah,
fancy
yeah.
about it, but they have a significance, and I had them made and I had them carved, these words. So it was very intentional. Yeah.
I'm making notes. I think I need those in my life too. And at the end of the day, Violaine, with everything that's going on in the world, who or what inspires you? Perhaps brings you comfort and hope.
You know, it sounds very cliche to say that, but having worked in so many places with people that are affected by crisis, it's incredible to see the power. Yeah, I know it's cliche because it used to be one of our motto, like the power of humanity, but I've seen the best of people and the worst, the devil and the other side, you know. But I think when we create conditions for people to thrive, and when we give people the means to, everyone has the same aspirations. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what is your religion. It doesn't matter, where you were born. Everyone has the same aspirations, and if we are able to connect with one another, this for me is the power of humanity. And the Red Cross is an incredible network of people, millions of people around the world. I started as a volunteer of the Red Cross in my own national society. And when I travel the world and I see a volunteer, I can tell that story, and immediately there is a connection. It doesn't matter where we are. It's like, oh, we are the same. We know exactly what it means. And suddenly we connect because we know that we are connected by the same values. And I think that some people do that through religion. I'm not a religious person, but maybe my religion is the Red Cross. I don't know. But I believe that, when you see the chaos in the world, and when you turn around and you look at what people are doing for their own communities, for their country, this gives me hope. And I think that, people in the end are all the same. They all have the same dreams. And by the way, I never watch the news.
Interesting.
I read some of the news.
Yes.
I read some of the news, but I don't watch the news.
When you
I
say
don't
you
have a
read it, where
TV.
do you read it?
I read it on different newspapers or, specialized magazines or, I like to go a bit deeper into the analysis of a situation, but I never watch or read like sensational news. Never.
Probably wise.
I find that extremely depressing, and it's not portraying the reality of the situation. It's just focusing on the poor people that are powerless, that are, so I don't see that in my day-to-day work. That's not what I see. And I don't want to start being influenced by those thoughts. I think people are full of resources, and it would be much nicer to feature how resilient people are and what is their coping mechanism, rather than portray them as victims. And
Yeah. The name of this podcast is People in the Red Vest. Perhaps you've already answered this, but what does the red vest mean to you?
The red vest is my life. The red vest is my best friend that I met as a volunteer in the Red Cross. The red vest is my peers. The red vest are people who are the lighthouse. Can I say that? The lighthouse.
Yes.
For other people. And it's quite incredible. Even when I travel as a tourist, it happened to me once. I was in trouble. I don't remember exactly. I think it was in Latin America. I had a problem and I was in trouble. And then I walked on the street and I passed by a Red Cross branch office. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to go in and ask for help. I'm just going to introduce myself. And I work for the International Red Cross. And, hello, my name is Violaine. And, I also used to be a volunteer. And so it's a community, and it's something that connects people together. Yeah.
Thank you, Violaine, for sharing your experience and your insights, and for allowing us to get to know you a little.
Thank you for having me.